go. Okay, well, welcome to the Entrepreneurs Roundtable on this Tuesday, 29th of June at 7:15 p.m. We have three panelists tonight and a whole host of attendees here who will be listening in to this roundtable. We have Simon Fordham, Ash Phillips, and Mark Huxley. Simon is chair of the Association of Business Mentors, and an organisation which seeks to improve the status and quality of business mentoring in the UK. And in many ways, the association does something very similar to what Qualified Tutor does. They raise standards in business mentoring, tutoring, by providing training, accountability, and a professional membership body that guarantees kind of minimum standards in the industry. So that's where Simon is coming from this evening. Ash Phillips is former podcast guest on the QT podcast and the founder of Different, which is the community for ambitious entrepreneurs and small business leaders. Just a little bit about Different. Different members receive access to some of the best kind of entrepreneur support services out there, including kind of accounting, well-being support, tax, investment opportunities, business analytics, and really much more. So Ash's community-led attitude, again, like Simon, aligns with Qualified Tutor's vision, and it's a pleasure to have an entrepreneurial leader like Ash with us. So thank you, Ash, for joining us. Many of you will know Mark already. I think most of the attendees that we have here were with us earlier on today. Mark's session was on values-based entrepreneurialism. That's available to watch on demand in the Festival Hub. Mark is an entrepreneurial coach and has been in the entrepreneurial world for a great number of years. So really kind of the perfect trio. Now, what I'd like to start with, just as we kick off here, is a question that will hopefully open up a bit more of the conversation that we're going to have tonight about the place of education in the kind of business world at the moment. And we've seen over lockdown a great amount of investment in education. So I'd like to pose to the three of you, and we'll kick off with Simon, if that's all right. Why is education such an exciting space for investment and development in this day and age, Simon?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we're living in an age where technology is ruling us, and education has to step up to that. And it is in many avenues. I think the opportunity now for education is to embrace technology as much as they can and understand what's going on out there in the big wide world of edutech. I tend to mentor people within tech industries and sector because I've used tech in all my businesses that I sold in 2017. And the beauty of that is that it gets you to a place quicker, leaner, greener, more effectively, more efficiently, and you can service more people at the same time as well. And also it allows us to reduce our cost base quite considerably, as long as we manage our technology carefully. The world is our oyster, in fact, of the cost base and how we use that to reach as many people as we can. And there's no boundaries when it comes to tech and education, and just like there isn't in agri-tech and fintech and all the other industries and sectors that use technology. We as mentors and coaches have lived in a world pre-pandemic, if you like, where most of our work was done on a face-to-face basis, whereas for the last 14, 15, 16 months, we've lived in the technology world of having to meet our clients virtually. And as a result of that, I've spread my client base geographically immensely. And I think that's the opportunity for edutech as well in the UK, is to spread what we do very, very well in this UK, and that's education. I'm not suggesting that the school system has got everything right. I think there's a lot they can do to do better, but that's down to the curriculum and our wonderful government. And that's what I try to do is with government, and the panels that I sit in with government is to educate them about business support and the education landscape and how we can use tech and mentoring and coaching to benefit the wider community.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so there's kind of been a a breaking down of the barriers that we might have previously had in education in terms of geography and proximity and those kind of things. Ash, how have you seen this kind of the breaking down of barriers affect the business that you do in bringing together business leaders?
Yeah, I mean, I think the business leaders that we bring together through different and the meetups that we've run, certainly, we're a company that's built on meetups, just so that everybody knows. An accidental business essentially that came out of building a community, and as a result of obviously the last 18 months, 12 months, we've seen a lot of requirement for virtual events to happen and technology to take the place of what was creating a physical environment for people to connect in the first place. As a result, we've done what Simon was referring to there, which is we've seen a lot wider reach, and we've seen a lot more people be able to connect across different borders, and that means that geography becomes less of an issue. When you think about this, when it comes to education, that becomes really exciting to me, because that means that we can start to reach people that are otherwise unreached with really high quality education, regardless of where they're based. I mean, there's a question in the chat right now that I'm sure we'll get to properly at some point soon, but thinking about how catchment areas potentially don't become a thing anymore. You know, there's some very talented tutors, I'm sure, that have been part of this event today, and if they can take their quality of education to people regardless of where they're based, that becomes really exciting, in my opinion. It means we can unlock the potential of people regardless of their circumstances, regardless of their location, regardless potentially of their affordability, and do that at scale, meaning that nobody gets left behind. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of difference in the community, connecting people across borders, and it's enabling them to do more work across a wider reach. And I think that extends to the education sector too.
Yeah, absolutely, and hopefully that's not just a kind of blip in the progress and development of education. That's kind of the start of this growing trend of educators feeling supported online, and specifically, obviously, for us, that means tutors, but certainly spreading over the wider education field as well. Mark, can I turn to you on reflections on how education has grown as an area of investment in the last kind of 2 or 3 years? Just thinking about why the edtech sphere has grown in those kind of areas.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to take a slightly different look down the lens, not to the last 2 years, but I think exciting is one word you can put in as a time to invest. I think there's much more around a societal language of a point of pivoting now. And if there's one, hopefully, good thing that has come out of this bloody awful pandemic and the lockdown that came with it, it showed the real desperate and immediate impact of children not being in a classroom, the emergence of real social poverty, of kids not in a classroom, not getting the chance for education, the stuff that went on with exams, children going into, or young adults going into tertiary education, probably ill prepared for their university life now. And to me, it showed a systemic fragility that has lived around the education sector for some time. So I think from a personal point of view, I think the real opportunity that EdTech being a digital execution of it, but I think with selling to an audience that need to buy the product, as it were, that actually this once in a lifetime opportunity for rethinking what does education look like and blending in classroom, class full education and individual tutoring education that goes on behind it is something not to be missed. Clearly, it's something the government has seen, and they've pumped 1.6 billion in, which I don't come from the education sector, as you know, but by all of the reporting, including those within the industry, that's a small drop in the ocean of need to put some of these things right. But if it shows an intent by the government to want to make a change, to me, to take the question that was posed, why is it an exciting space for investment and development, is because actually there's a real need for it now, and there's a real opportunity for guys sitting on these calls and others to really go out, make a difference at the local level and the national level, and perhaps to the point Simon started with, getting into an international level where education can now fully cross boundaries, and we get richer experience in the students that go through the system. So to me, there's a huge amount of lost ground to be made up. There's a high benchmark that needs to be set for tutoring. And this is the great work that Qualified Tutors does to actually make sure people are best prepared. Lovely that it also recognises the role of the individual tutor as well as an agency that wants to work broader with a wider cohort of tutors, and I think we're going to talk into some of those areas later in the conversation. But to me, it will harness correctly, delivered properly, and the propositions thought through seriously as to what they're going to do for the longer term. I just think the real excitement comes from the fact that there is a massive change to be made to our next generation, and we can't afford, nobody can afford to get this wrong, because I think there's a real danger that as 3 to 5 years, many of these kind of mid-teen students come out of the education system, they're going to be ill prepared for the workplace that's going to confront them. And certainly, Ash, Simon, and myself in our other day jobs, we see the kind of organisations that are looking to go down different journeys, and we know the rigors that it takes to be a good entrepreneur in society, or even be a good employee in whatever the new workplace is going to look. So,
yeah,
big serious job to be done.
Can I go into that a little bit further? How do we think the role of a good entrepreneur has changed, given that so much more of what entrepreneurs do in whatever sector has moved online now? That's for kind of any of the three of you. I'm just picking up on what Mark was saying there. How has the role of what good entrepreneurship changed since we've moved online? Simon, I love the hand, please.
Yeah, I just look, with entrepreneurs generally have an obligation to protect the community that they work within. And I don't think, it doesn't matter whether that community is online or whether it's virtual, whether it's face-to-face, or whether it's literally out, opening your front door and going out and helping people. I think, Mark and Ash, I'm sure, are the same ilk, that we didn't do what we did to make money. What we did because we saw a gap in the market, an opportunity to do something better, to help others do what they do in a different way, maybe. I think money comes as a result of doing something really good. So money is a byproduct for me in entrepreneurship. And I spent 25 years in the hospitality and leisure sector, which has been decimated over the last 16 months. And I sat on various government panels trying to help the government understand what they need to do to do things better. And I think as entrepreneurs, we need to take a step up now. And it's not about rhetoric. It's not about, the few entrepreneurs that have a famous name saying some maybe inappropriate words at different times. It's about actually coming together and working collectively to make sure that what we do is help the communities throughout, virtual and face-to-face, to do things better and create opportunity for everybody. And I think that's what entrepreneurship is really about.
Yeah, I would agree. And actually, I think kind of looping this into the education sector, the thing that technology has done is actually, I feel, kind of the opposite of what people are worried about when it comes to technology at scale and the world going more virtual. So people seem to think, and rightly or wrongly so, that the rise of technology means that humans are going to lose jobs. We're going, technology is coming to take our jobs. Education's becoming automated. There's a whole other stuff that's becoming automated, and that means that humans are at risk. But what I've seen in the reality is that humans are just becoming more human, I would say. And so soft skills are becoming so vitally important. The understanding of how to manage relationships, personal, professional, has never been more important as it has in the last kind of 12 months. And that is not only important for entrepreneurs to understand, because humans are everything to us, right? They're our customers, they're our partners, they're our employees, they're our bosses, they're our shareholders, they're everything. And if we don't understand them and how to communicate with them, then we're at risk. And I think when it comes to tutoring at whatever level that may be, an early stage with an early age, or a larger kind of institution with an older demographic, soft skills are still vitally important as well. If we're teaching the next generation, whatever age that may be, to communicate better with people and how to manage their relationships better, then we'll have a better society by default, and better businesses within them. So yeah, soft skills is a really hot piece for me right now.
I'd round both those comments off and say certainly during my time as an entrepreneur, I've seen a change from something was almost undefined and undefinable. What is an entrepreneur? And being candid about it, many were just seen as a bit of a seedy chancer, you know, kind of not quite kind of above the wire, much defined by Alan Sugar and, you know, The Apprentice and the kind of folks that would go on there and the way that people put in there and the kind of rock star mentality that Simon quite rightly speaks of kind of celebrity entrepreneurs, to actually something which is now being crafted into an art and a science, and there is a real methodology of entrepreneurship now. You know, it's a big thing, probably driven out much by the kind of MBA type students that came out, that went down through their lives, and it showed that there was a different way of vocationally educating people into that art and that science of entrepreneurship. And as we covered much this morning, there is a rhythm to how you actually do that and how you actually put it together. So I think now, for the first generation, I think ever unprecedented, there is a land of opportunity of self-fulfillment to become an entrepreneur, to do what you want. And I think, you know, Ash being slightly younger than me, you know, I wish I was in his shoes, having the opportunities that he's got and the empowerment that society has given Ash to go and do what he wants to do. There were many, many more headwinds back in the past, where now, you know, we've created tailwinds to encourage entrepreneurship. Many people won't go into long-term careers now. They'll take portfolios up. They'll look to do different things. They'll be an entrepreneur by side hustle, if nothing else. There'll always have something else on the go. And I just think that's such a healthy thing, because if it brings out this kind of curiosity amongst us to want to do something, and actually do something that's going to make a change for other people. And again, I think, you know, Simon said it at the start of his piece, that people set out to be entrepreneurs because they feel they can make a difference somewhere, because something isn't quite right and they want to put that one thing not quite right. So I think there's never been a better time to do it. That generation sitting behind, this emerging generation again, you know, properly empowered, whether the much vaunted fourth industrial revolution that Charles Schwab spoke about a couple of 3 years ago will truly come in our near lifetime, it will certainly drive a change in how we all operate around each other and the opportunities that we've got. And to your direct question, Ludo, with much of the commercial world now moving online, it's just a world of opportunity, and it is there to be grasped, but under some guidance and under some rules. And again, you know, it's what Simon does well with his association of business mentors, and obviously it's what Ash does, cleaving and driving a different community together.
Yeah, Simon, I'm gonna off the back of that, I'm gonna turn towards you here as well. We focus a little bit on what the Association of Business Mentors does then. So how can either, you know, you can pull on the Association of Business Mentors or the idea of business mentoring itself. How can that help tutors? How can that be part of what a tutor sees in their business, having a mentor?
Yeah, thanks, Ludo. That's a big question. Look, everybody needs someone to help them in business. I didn't get where I am today, to coin a phrase, without looking around me and seeing who can help me do what I want to do and get where I want to go. And I think, you know, we don't often know the challenges that we're going to face in business, and it's not until we embrace a mentor and the value that mentoring can bring where we actually learn that these people have done it, most of it, before. And, you know, we don't reinvent wheels as entrepreneurs. We may do things a little bit differently. We may do things a little bit bespoke, and we may be a little bit out there and quirky, and probably unemployable when it comes to it, because we're running a business, and, you know, we don't like taking orders from anybody else in the business environment. But mentors aren't like that. Mentors are there to give you the big hug you need in business. They're there to give you the pat on the back. They're there to say thank you. They're there to also give you a kick up the backside, actually, when you need it in business, when you're stuck and you need to be challenged. And we do that through, you know, the use of psychology and the way we question and the way we help people and give advice, but most of all, what we bring is empathy. And members of the Association of Business Mentors have all run their own businesses. They're not mentors from large corporates or middle managers or British Aerospace or anything like that. We are business people that have run our own businesses, have started businesses, know what it's like to hire and fire and worry about paying people and how we're going to pay the tax man. And that's what makes us unique. And we're a trade body representing those professional people, and we're raising the bar in respect of business mentoring generally. And that's got me in front of government, ministers and Secretary of States, telling them what mentoring is, because they didn't know. There's still a big impression that mentoring is free and can only be free. Well, actually, people are making a career out of it because they're bloody good at what they do. And I will hug every single one of my members in our organisation to say that they can go into any business and not look at the business. We look at the people, we look at the individual, and we look at what that business owner is about, what their aspirations are, what their vision is, what the mission is, what the values are, why are they doing what they're doing, have they still got that burning spark of desire in their tummy to do what they do. And as far as educators and tutors go, you're running a business. It's a passionate business, and because you're doing it for all the right reasons. But entrepreneurs do that every single day in, day out. We do what we do for all the right reasons, hopefully, most of us. And we all need help, and that's where a mentor comes in. We're the soundboard, the listening ear, the person that gives you the hug, the person that gives you a kick up the butt, the person that you can phone at 9 o'clock at night and say, I'm really not sure about what's going on in my business at the moment, or something didn't go well today, can I have a chat? And I have the benefit of having some very valued clients that use me appropriately, and a couple of famous names as well, celebrities that I mentor, and they've got huge businesses running behind them, and they all need help. It's a very lonely place running a business, and that's where a mentor comes in. We're there to make it not so lonely.
Yeah, a bit like mum, dad, brother, sister.
Well, I don't know, family business and mum and dad and brothers. I don't know if we want to go there.
So Ash, can just diving a little bit further into the different community, just so that our listeners understand a little bit more, is that a mentoring, is that a business mentoring community, or how do the members within different kind of interact with each other?
Yeah, I guess give you the whistle stop tour. It's very, very easily understood as business benefits for creators, and we provide that by subscription. So in a world of, I guess, two types of entrepreneurial support, you have membership organizations on one side, much like what Simon runs for mentors, but for small businesses, I guess, instead. They're institutional, they've been around for years, and so the culture is often a little bit outdated, and with regards to the sort of startups that we tend to kind of support. On the other side, you've got accelerators and incubators, which are great, but they're geographically confined, application-based, sector-specific, and dilutionary from an equity point of view. So they're actually only really relevant for a very small subset of people. In the middle, you have different, and different basically is on a mission to democratize high quality entrepreneurial support for anyone that needs it, regardless of who they are, where they are, what they're building. And then, we provide support. We provide support on demand in a generalist way. So anyone that's running any type of business, including cheap plug, a tutoring business, for example, can access that on-demand support as and when they need it. We provide that in a professional capacity. So we have a bank of lawyers, accountants, advisors, as you nicely mentioned at the start of the call, that are available to respond to professional inquiries and qualified to do so within a reasonable amount of time. Saves you from calling them up and worrying about the meter running from the time you pick up the phone. And then we also have extra tiered levels of support called Different Plus. And Different Plus does, as Simon was alluding to there, connect people with the perfect advisor. We like to say perfect. We've got it right pretty much every time so far. So good track record, but with the perfect advisor for their business at the right time. We're basically arbitraging the available time that high quality, very in demand people might give, 1 or 2 hours a month pro bono to an early stage startup that might need it. But that relationship sometimes breaks down. So we formalize that, put them in a relationship together, manage that, and provide that support in between the two of them, and let them have what is essentially in the corporate world known as a non-exec directorship, but in a more informal and softer and definitely more affordable approach. So different levels of support. And obviously the elephant in the room, really, that goes without saying, something that you've probably seen through this event today and you see through the QT community, is peer support. There's nothing like it, really. Everybody kind of like chipping in, helping each other out, and swapping what I like to call social currency. They help each other. That's worth something. And then you call that in later on as a favor, and away you go. And that's how you, quote unquote, in the startup world, bootstrap stuff. So yeah, lots of different ways that we do it, and none of it original. We've borrowed all of it off of everybody else, and hopefully just do it with a little bit of finesse.
I think so, just a touch. So yeah, there's certainly definite kind of similarities there, aren't there, between kind of mentoring and then kind of bringing a community of like-minded individuals together and allowing them to almost kind of mentor each other, but without that kind of mentor-mentee, the formal mentor-mentee relationship. It's more just a kind of flat structure, but obviously both work very, very well, and different businesses need different kind of support, and may need different kind of support through the course of their kind of lifetime. Now I'm just going to direct the conversation a little bit now more towards growth and more towards the kind of development, the evolution of a business, because that's something that the three of you have watched happen day after day after day. So let's tap into a little bit of that kind of knowledge and expertise. So kind of drawing on the experiences that you three have had, which as we've talked about before, aren't specific to tutoring, but definitely understand the kind of nature of education. Whether it's a tutoring business or really just any business, why should that business leader take the next step? Why, for example, let's say for a tutor, why should a tutor who has 5 to 6 students a week and is doing very well with those, why should they take their business from that to suddenly managing or employing a team of 5 or 6 tutors with, each with 5 students themselves? Why should a business leader take their business to the next level?
I think you asked very much the right question, Ludo. Why should they? and I think that comes down to that kind of personal spirit and purpose that they've got in the business. Every business and every person running a business has to recognise the optimum size that they are to do and aspire to achieve what they set out to do with that business. And if it's a single tutor that's quite happy with their portfolio of running those half dozen people a week, then great. So actually there isn't a decision to be made. The decision is already made because that person has clearly got to a point where they've become dissatisfied, bored, unfulfilled doing what they're doing, and they feel like I could do more. So much as we spoke about this morning, is that's a self-apparent purpose that if they see that and recognize that in themselves, that's the trigger to start thinking, I want to share this love a little bit wider. I want to do more. I want to help more people. I want to set something up to do that. And then that is the start of a scaling journey, which is a whole raft of very organized sets of thinking that the people have to have. So I'll park now because I think it's fair that the other two guys put their 2 pence in to start with before we start talking about what scaling actually looks like.
I think it's a really tough question. I think Mark's actually very right. It's what you want and what you're comfortable with and what your aspirations are. I'm a bloke who probably isn't satisfied with the status quo, and entrepreneurs generally tend to look for the next step in growth or development or in business. And that was certainly, encapsulated everything that I thought about my business. And, I took a fairly medium-sized hospitality company to an international organisation operating all over the world. And that wasn't because I wasn't satisfied, it's because I just saw opportunity to do something different and better, and to give people great service as a result of it. And I think, business isn't complicated, but it is complex, and you do have to spin the plates. And if you get the right people around you doing the right things that are probably cleverer than you doing what they do. You know, I'm not a marketeer and I'm not a salesperson, but I knew how to manage people, and I loved the people that worked for me, and they were my biggest asset ever. You know, especially in hospitality. You know, you're only as good as the front of house staff, and you're only as good as the kitchen staff, and you're only as good as the people at the event. You know, wearing the bandanas and the vests. You know, so for me, it was all about training. It was all about investment in staff, in training, in time, in nurturing, in mentoring them, and also in training them to do better. You know, because the best day in my life was seeing our kitchen porter, our KP, who come in as a 17-year-old, 11 years later, having grown through the kitchen, going on to be an executive, or sorry, a head chef, you know, in a gourmet pub somewhere. You know, and that's fantastic. And it wasn't with my organisation, but I'd allowed him to do it. And I think that's what every business entrepreneur needs, is that realisation that the people around us are their best asset. And I think growing a business is about that. If you don't want to do it, that's great. You know, if you want to keep to 5 tutors and 10 students, you know, 15 students or whatever it is, there's nothing wrong with that. But just there's no reason why you can't reach for the stars. You know, processes, systems, people, get it right, it'll all happen. And when it does happen, it's a fantastic feeling, trust me.
Yeah. Ash, I'm gonna jump in here with a little question that I'm gonna direct towards you. So when someone does decide, as we well know, many individuals who start a company do decide to take the next step, all right? So they decide to go one further. They think they're ready to scale and to grow. What are some of the main pitfalls that you see when a business leader goes from kind of sole trader to managing a team? What gets left behind that you've seen?
So I think the first thing that gets missed is combining the two things that both Mark and Simon have rightly spoken about, is not understanding why they've even done that in the first place is a really important factor, and something that people trip over. They think they're supposed to go to the next step because that's just the natural next step, but someone can often find themselves running a bigger company than they're comfortable running or wanted to run, because actually they wanted to scale their pricing and themselves as opposed to the size of the company. Barbara mentioned it, I think, in the chat, where it's like, actually you go from from delivering to managing people. If you don't want to be a manager, then don't be a manager. Just be the I think it was Martin Luther King that kind of, paraphrasing him here, talking about like, don't just be a road sweeper, be the best damn road sweeper in the world. If you want to be the tutor, then be the best tutor there's ever been, and charge accordingly. But if you want to run a tutoring agency of 100 staff, then do that and be the best manager there's ever been. One or the other, or a bit of both is absolutely fine too. So I think the thing that people get wrong is often at the root, which is understanding why they're doing it. People are generally powered by, and this is an oversimplification, but they're powered by the want for money, the want for impact, or narcissism, and sometimes one of those is masquerading as the other one. None of them are wrong, none of them are bad, even though narcissism sounds bad. It's just a human trait, and the power is in identifying which one of those or how much of each is the thing that's powering you, and then delivering the business that serves that need. If you want to be known, but you're not that worried about how much you get paid, that's fine. You could build a business around that. If you want to get rich, but you're not worried about how much you're known, that's fine. You could build a business around that. But it's just about figuring out what that is first before you go to that next step. And then I think, you know, not to, again, oversimplify it, as Mark rightly said, it's not complicated, but it is very complex. You have to spin plates. Is that people try and do so many things at once, and they think about the polishing of the business before they even get the inner workings going. Obviously, there's lots of talk about the MVP, right? The minimum viable product. At the end of the day, tutoring is probably, I'm going to assume here, because I have no experience in your industry, so I don't want to teach anyone on this call to suck eggs, but like winning a client that's going to pay for some tutoring some way, delivering said tutoring, invoicing for that, getting paid for it, and repeat the cycle for as many hours and as many people as possible. But then we get caught up in detail, start branding ourselves, building websites, doing marketing, all distracts away from that. But it should all add. And so I think what I see a lot of the time when it comes to putting my investor hat on from a startup perspective, people do a little graph that looks a little bit, I'm going to try and do this the right way, like this. And it goes along for a long time, and eventually it just peaks up. But actually, I think more realistically, it looks a little bit more like a staircase, right? So you add more to your ledger, and then you build in efficiencies and operational effectiveness. Then you add a little bit more, and you do it again. You add a bit more. Eventually, you climb that step, and you eventually get to the point at which you're at. the easiest way to get there is to figure out what part of that staircase you want to be on, work backwards, figure out what your task is right now, deliver that task, repeat, eventually you get there. And the weirdest thing, I think, just to round all of this up, is that you don't really realize it as you're doing it until you actually end up at that point. And then one day you just sat there like, this was something I had on my to-do list and I'm finally here. And then you never really realize it because that to-do list never really ends. Entrepreneurship, or at least an entrepreneurial mindset, is just a want for progression, I think. Like, if you want the boat and you get the boat, it's hard to retire on that boat because you want a bigger boat. And you don't want it for the capitalistic reason of just wanting a bigger boat. You want it because it's just like, well, I could go and earn myself a bigger boat for progress. So yeah, a whole like brain dump there, but hopefully gives you an idea.
Ash, I'll put a couple of comments over the top of that if you don't
Yeah.
mind. So a big part of my day job as an advisor, my sweet spot is helping a mid-size business become a bigger business, and they are absolutely going through this scaling transition. And the simple line I wanted to put over the top of, Ash was massively insightful there, is that there's a mentality thing that I look at when I talk to these businesses, because you go into an organization and I think about it, am I now in a big small business, or am I in a small big business? And the difference between the two is the fact that the big small business is still driven by I, me, my. It's still very much about I'm the owner, I do it my way, and we're going to do things this way. Where the big part, and it goes back to that management comment that was made, is actually when you become a larger business, you've got to make that philosophical translation from I, me, my to we, us, our, because actually you are now in something which is going to be the sum of some much bigger parts than the individuals that are in it. And actually you as the owner, the founder, have got to go on that massive journey of giving away the I, me, my, and realizing that almost you're going to start another journey of inbuilt self-redundancy. Because if you can take that business to where you want it to be, it absolutely cannot be about you being in that business, relying on the I, me, my, that if I don't turn up for work, no one's got the keys to open the door. It carries on when I'm not there, which is massively fulfilling, but equally frustrating if you're not ready to take that journey. So the scaling journey is really about you as the founder, as the owner, being ready just to release, like when your own kids grow up, you get to that point, they grow up and they leave home. Are you happy for them to leave home? Because they're never going to come back, and you can't put that genie back in a bottle.
Simon, I feel like you were just about to jump on Barbara's question there. I was going to position this towards you and Ash in particular, but do you want to elaborate on that comment you've just made in the chat box?
Yeah, look, I mentioned about business being complex but not complicated, and business is about spinning the plates. It's about the circus clown keeping those plates spinning on those sticks. And do you know what? Sometimes one crashes, but the fact that the business person is able to find another plate quickly and let it spin again before someone even notices what's going on in the back office, then that's what makes business so exciting, I think. And I'm using hospitality as my sector and why I can speak about, because things go wrong in a kitchen every single night. Sauces curdle, butter splits. It happens all the time. But the beauty of the good chef is that he or she gets on with it and makes another one, or learns from his mistake, her mistake, and creates another one. And I think that's what business is about. Nobody is infallible. We will all make mistakes, but we learn from them as well. I lost an enormous amount of money in one of my business ventures when I partnered with someone who I shouldn't have partnered with. It happens, Did I learn from it? God, did I learn from it? Would I do it again? I'd certainly do it differently. And the pain still haunts me, and I still look in the mirror and go, why did I allow it to happen? The pain never goes away. The scars are always there. But we grow, we get better, we get bigger, and we evolve as a result of it. And I think, for me, a lot of that pain is really hurtful. And as an entrepreneur, you take it personally. As a business owner, you take it personally because you've potentially made that mistake or error, and it hurts. But if we dwell on it, where would it get us? Let's look forward, let's learn from it, and let's move on. And we can all look at the bad hires we made, you know, the people that we took on face value or trust or used our gut to hire someone, and 3 months later they're a complete waste of space and they shouldn't be in the business. What do we do with them? No, but we all understand that and learn it and get over it and move on. I think failure is just something that we live with. You know, I don't think anybody doesn't appreciate what failure can actually give us as a strength. It makes us stronger, you know. And I'm 57 years old, and I'm just about to start one of the biggest projects I've ever gone into. You know, and my wife looks at me and goes, "Why are you doing it?" And I go, "Well, because I can." Will it fail? Maybe, who knows? But, you know, am I risking something? Yes, probably reputation more than anything. But I've got to do it because it's there, you know, and that's what we do.
Yeah. And also the speed at which many of us move in the business world. If you dwell on something for a week, then you've lost, you know, months of progress. So yeah, it's an interesting interplay, isn't it, between reflecting on your mistakes so that you can learn from it, and reflecting on your mistake because it's consuming the things you do. So that there's a fine line to draw there between reflecting on something. Ash, just before we move on from, well, I was going to say just before we move on from failure, but that's not quite what I meant by that. But just before we move on from what this topic we've got ourselves onto here, that step model you were talking about, what do we do when the step doesn't go up, it actually goes down, even if we've had 3 up in a row? Where do we go from there?
Sure. So I think there's a couple of answers to this, right? You've got the first one, which is the practical one, and then there's also the emotional one, which I see people are asking about in the chat too. So like the first and foremost thing is if it doesn't go quite right, then something happens, and this is almost a can of worms, such a can of worms actually, that I started asking it as a question at an event that I went to before, ended up more of an observation, and then everyone just ended up discussing it until I had to leave. Apparently I won a book for best question, even though it wasn't really a question. I didn't even get the book because I had to leave before they finished. The whole point that I was making was that as an entrepreneurial person, because I know not everybody identifies as an entrepreneur, you have an emotional reaction to both the highs and the lows in running a business. And running a company in any shape or form is one of the most rewarding, but also potentially one of the most stressful things that you'll ever do. I say that as someone who isn't a parent yet, by the way. So anyone who is, and I know lots of you, regardless of parenthood, are probably still dealing with kids. So that's probably one of the most challenging things you'll do. But running a business is too. And because of that, you get bad days and you get great days. Both of them exist because of the other, right? This is the most important thing. And I don't claim to be a mindset coach or any kind of coachy type person. Don't really like that word anyway, but it's just an observation, I guess, as a person or as a human. If something negative happens, I have a failure. Obviously, this is the point we're on. Then I will, at the start, take that very personally. As somebody in the chat, I think Barbara mentioned, you know, how do you not take it personally? You will. You just will. It just happens. You take it personally. You associate yourself with the business. If someone doesn't like my business, they don't like me. Therefore, I'm going to take it personally. I want everyone to like me. This is my need. It's something that I have. I know some people have it more, some people have it less, but I do. So when something bad happens, I take it personally. Over time, I mitigate that emotional reaction because I don't want to feel bad all of the time. Like that sucks a lot. So I'm going to mitigate that emotional reaction. But the highs that come as a result of the lows, it's like a wave, right? So this is the way I view it. It's like a wave. If you mitigate the response to the negative reaction, you accidentally start mitigating the response to the positive reaction too. And so what you end up doing is starting to flatten that wave. And this is when you come up with the stereotypical, almost like just a parody of ourselves, of this like sociopathic, you know, managing director of a company that has no emotion whatsoever. Something bad happens, they don't care. Something good happens, they don't care. It's because we've been over time, over this growth of these steps, mitigating our emotional response so we can just keep calm, carry on, classic British saying, right? Just keep going and something will stick. That's the emotional aspect. And the only way I've been able to overcome that is just double down on the wins. No matter how small, celebrate them. You will mitigate the negative pieces, but you can still double down on the wins, recognize them, celebrate them, say, hey, look how far I've come, and keep celebrating that so you can recognize those steps. Practically, I don't want to oversimplify this, but we learn to walk by falling over. And so every time I fail, I'm probably just a bit closer to actually getting it right. Logically, like I'm a science nerd, logically that makes sense. There is a fine line between, you know, just ambition and tenacity and just absolute madness, but hopefully practicing enough self-awareness, like everybody should in this call, I presume, be able to do, we can figure out whether we're taking it a bit too far or not. If we've been going 10 years doing exactly the same thing and nothing's sticking, it's probably our fault that we're not really getting it right. But if I go 2 weeks and I do something and it doesn't work and I change it slightly, and I go another 2 weeks and something doesn't work and I change it slightly, as long as I keep changing something, that step eventually is going to go up rather than just keep going along. And then you double down on the bit that goes right. So hopefully, emotionally and practically, we can get those steps going up.
Yeah, no, hopefully we can. And I think you've given some fairly good strategies there for managing those inevitable failures of business. That, as I said before, given how fast things can move in the entrepreneurial world, there's every possibility that there'll be a big failure in the morning, and by the evening in that same day, you'll have reached the point that you were at before. So very good lessons there for sticking with it and for committing to the process, as it were, or even though that sounds kind of a little bit mechanical. That very good. So didn't envisage kind of moving into the area of how we deal with failure, and actually, interestingly, that seems to be a topic that comes up kind of widely, but people don't often talk about how we deal with the success, because that can equally, that could derail a business potentially, and we could have moved into that area. But I want to move into an area that the three of our panelists here kind of embody, and which certainly of the small business leaders and future leaders that I know in the audience tonight, I know that they embody this as well, and that's the area of kind of purpose-driven business and values-driven business. So, Mark, I'd like to start with you on this one. And really, what I'd like to know is how we communicate our purpose, our story, our drive to the market in front of us. Now, obviously, coming from a tutoring background, the framework of this festival, kind of asking this in the scope of, if a tutor is kind of running a small business, how can they continue to communicate that purpose, that story behind them, to the kind of client market in front of them? Using your experience from other industries, how can that work for a small business owner?
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head when you talked at the start of it about being purpose driven, and I think if you have an ability to have an absolute clarity over purpose, and you can kind of internalize and objectivize that yourself to actually see, I'm getting out of bed every day because I want to do this one thing. Tutoring is the transaction of what you're doing. It's what's the difference I'm making by that. And if we can kind of somewhat mentally envision the front of a Roman villa, think of any kind of property. You've got a foundation that runs across the bottom. So that's what you get out of bed transactionally every day to do. I am a private tutor. I help children tutoring, and I teach these subjects, and that's what I do. Sitting like in any house, you've got the pillars that sit at the front of it that keep the house up. And that's very much about your values and your culture. And that's why am I getting out of bed every to do this, and this is the stuff that Simon Sinek very much talks about in his book, is understanding the why. And that's the purpose that drives you to do it and what you want to be defined by. And like any good house, you've got to have a roof that sits on the top of it. That's supposed to be a triangle that I drew there. And in this sense, what that is actually the essence of why I'm doing it. What's embodying it? I get out of every day to tutor kids because I want to make a difference to my local community. I want to give, socially immobile. I want to create a better future for them. I want to have global tutoring, sitting out across the world. And that's the essence that sits across the top. And it's the embodiment of those three. If you can get that literally drawn out in your mind, then everything you then do becomes very natural, because there is a real spiritual sincerity about why you're doing what you're doing. And actually, it's so much easier, and we spoke about this when we did the session this morning. It's so important to create this emotional connection with people immediately. And I think very much in what you guys do in your day-to-day work. If you're working in local communities, there was someone on the session this morning who was talking about being slightly trolled by other tutors in her community on Facebook. And I didn't say it in the session, but to me, I think it's the best thing in the world, because clearly this woman's a threat to the people around her because she's better at what she does and she's found a way of vocalizing it. Brilliant. Just take that on. So to me, the kind of purpose-driven element is having that clarity of singularity of purpose, that I know I'm getting out of bed and I'm doing this because I want to make a damn difference to this world, and I just don't want to be another, schlock in the line of tutors sitting out there. So that's, yeah, I'm kind of passion driven in the businesses I get involved in and I help with. I do it because I can see and you can care for the people that are in those businesses. And I think if you've got that, we were talking earlier about soft skills training. It's so much easier to just tell truths and tell lies, be trustworthy, just make people want to be around you, and that you will be liked because they see that emotional sincerity that you've got in what you're doing.
Simon, can I ask your thoughts on this as well, just off the back of that?
Yeah, it's interesting that Mark brought up Simon Sinek, because I'm sure he stole my words, because I was talking about vision and values and purpose about 20 years ago in the businesses that I ran and started. But I'm sure he probably didn't read my paper on it. I think vision, values and purpose never leave you. If you're doing what you're doing for a reason and it gets you out of bed, like Mark said, and it makes you smile and happy, then fill your boots, go and do it. You don't have to grow, you don't have to be the biggest at what you're doing, but as long as you're happy. And I think one thing that I've learned over the last probably 5 years, more than ever, 4 years since I sold my business, is that family and health come at the top of the list, and you must never lose sight of the people around you. And I remember my wife saying to me when our kids were growing up, 6-7 years into a new business, which we've invested a lot of money in, when are you actually going to earn any money out of this? And I think the vision is tough, and but I still had the purpose, the vision is there. I can see it, I can envisage it, I can picture it up in the cloud somewhere in that blue sky, what it's going to end up being, but I'm still not making any money. And I think that's the real leap of faith for an entrepreneur and a business owner, is that they know they're doing it right, they know they're doing it well, they can see the vision and they understand the purpose, and they want to help and they want to get to where they want to go. And if you lose sight of that, then you need to think about why you're doing what you're doing and do something else. It's so easy to go and get a job. Working for yourself or employing people is not easy. It's so easy just to go down and apply for another job and do whatever you do and take your paycheck and go home at night, turn off, have a glass of wine or whatever you want to do. Business isn't like that. Business is, I'm sure Mark and Ash are the same. I've laid awake at 3 o'clock in the morning worrying about business and worrying about my staff, worrying about a director or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But if you lose the passion, go and do something else. Don't ever lose the passion, and the why for me never goes away. And I think the opportunity now is for you to look at what you're doing, how you're doing it, making sure you're doing it to the best of your ability and capabilities. And if there are other people out there that you want to emanate, then go and emanate them. Be the best you can, and don't reinvent the wheel. Just give that a huge hug what's out there in the service sector already in your sector, and try and do it better. But you don't even have to do it better. You just have to be best at what you do. And I think the term that I've loved, that government has probably been most successful at over its last 20 years, is best value. And it's making sure that we give the best value possible to our clients at every opportunity and every touch point. If we do that and we embrace it, then we can't go wrong, and we can sleep at night knowing we've done the best.
And that's so important for tutors, isn't it? Because obviously our clients cannot, in a large part, are our students, and kids are so able to pick up on these little kind of differences in attitude or focus, and so if we don't give our best in our sessions, then we've arguably we've got the most fickle client of all, which is a young child who is curious about learning and kind of wants to. It's just figuring things out. So for tutors, we have, that's so important in our minds, is to be driven by purpose and to be driven by kind of the desire to help our client, not taking away from other industries. But the question that Barbara's just posed there is very much in line with where I wanted this to go next, actually. And I think the question that I'd like to ask really is quite specific to education, but can certainly be drawn on, from the industries in which you guys have come from. So, for example, let's imagine a kind of situation where a tutor is running a small but highly kind of profitable business, doing very well in their business, but it's still in its kind of early stages. Where should the next investments be made? Where can someone with a tutoring business, either as a private tutor or with a kind of a larger business, where can the next investment be made? Where should a tutor go next if they are a small business but with good kind of returns from their clients? I guess that's kind of tied into what Barbara is talking about. Maybe we can move on to that as a kind of secondary question about kind of investment, external investment. But where should the next investment be made if you have a small but profitable business?
I'll have a crack at the start of it. Barbara, you've asked the world's biggest, most difficult question. Well done. We could be until midnight, I think. And
get the prize for best question, Barbara.
Oh, well, yeah, it's certainly going to be the toughest one to answer.
You get the champagne.
Yeah, exactly that. So I think investability is philosophical and financial. So go back to what we said earlier about growing your business. Why are you looking to invest in your business? Why do you want to take it on from where you are? If you're earning a really nice crust, if you're feeding your family, if you're having a bit of fun money on the side of it and feel you're doing good, you should never feel obliged that you want to grow the business. So get back to that purpose, get back to why do I want to invest in the business? So that's your intellectual investment in it and your commitment to it. If you have come to that point where you think, no, actually, I do want to grow that business, the minute you start talking about investing in a business, and I think Simon put it into the chat where he said, you are completely changing the business as you know it, is you are now in a circus with the lion tamers, and you've got a whole series of lions sitting in front of you, and you're just going to be poking your head gently into all of those lions to see which ones might bite you, might not bite you. And you've got to go in on that basis that investability in a business is a pure negotiation based upon the fact of you have a perceived need to want to grow your business, and you have to be very clear about why you want to have that need to grow your business. You've got to have an end journey that says, I'm growing my business because it's now going to take it from scale A or scale A to scale X, and scale X will give return Z, which is going to be the profit to the investor. And actually, the investor is going to look on the other side of it and say, is that business investable? And they will, somewhere in the middle of that, you will find out what do I want to invest in that business in. Whatever way you dress it up, unless you are working in a community interest company or social entrepreneur or a third sector company, you are going to be seeding something to an investor. So that's either going to be controlling the company because you're going to seed equity, and that, depending on how much that investor's putting in and what he sees the return on it, he would take equity. So great, you'll have hopefully a bigger company, but a smaller share of that company. So will you actually gravitate to make the returns on that company that makes it worthwhile you investing in it in the first place? Or he's going to do it on convertible debt. So all he's doing is he's basically just going to give you a whole bunch of money on a debt, and at some point he's going to expect to get the kind of Merchant of Venice Shylock pound of flesh back from you in cash or flesh. So it's a really, really difficult, which is why it's a massively big pivot point for what you would want to do with a business. Investors are horrible people. They're just we're all investors. We've all invested in businesses, and we're nice investors. But generally,
even Ash is a nice investor.
Even young Ash, who wants to be like, Ash wants to be liked by everybody, and he's an investor. I can't believe it. Everyone's going to hate him. But genuinely, because you're just a transaction to them, so you are just a piece of meat in the ring that they're gonna make really big choices over, and they're going to bully you. They'll bully you because they're going to make sure this is going to work for them. So that's why it becomes a very complex question, because you've really got to think really deep to the heart of why do you want to take this business forward, and what is it going to look like for me if I take it on, and prepare yourself for some real pain, and to hear things about you and your business that you're not going to like. So again, whoever said it earlier about taking things personally, I mean, I'm sure both Ash and I know Simon has, but Simon and I spend a lot of time with each other, that we've both sat in the Esters and we've been told which way is up. When you're 61 years old as I am, I don't take that well, be honest with you, because I don't want to live my life that way anymore. But it's a hard road. I'm going to let the other guys talk. While they're talking, I'm going to see if I can find a link to. There's an organisation called the British Venture Capitalists Association, BVCA, and on their website they've got a fantastic guide to raising capital, which I urge you to read if it's something to see.
It's a brilliant article. I've read that. It's pretty good.
You see it from the investor's point of view, and in the middle of that, the absolute moment of truth when you get into the investment is writing your business plan, and it's a very transactional thing that you've got to do. So I'll let the guys talk, because I've taken up a lot of time there, but I'm going to see if I can find that. And if I can find a link to it, I'll post it on it, and urge any one of you thinking about doing and going that path, take it, read it, and digest it many times.
Simon, was there something you wanted to say?
Everything Mark said, I echo. I think the dawn to that, I guess we could suggest, is there are ethical investors out there now that do look to invest for the right reasons rather than just return. And what they're looking for potentially is to invest in the right businesses that have the right vision, aspirations, and values. There's a number of large investment houses now that have changed their way they invest and the reason they invest. However, they still want their pound of flesh. They're still looking for their money. They're still looking for their percentage return. I've actually worked with an education business for the last year, and they've just received a massive round of investment for a particularly intensive growth spurt that they're undertaking. But the hoops they had to jump through to get that investment, and the pain and the blood they had to give to be able to attract the investment was quite severe. And the owner of the business, who I was actually mentoring, coaching, whatever you want to call it, and that's a debate in itself, I'm happy to have any time, is immense. And the owner said to me, I don't actually know why I did this, because I'm not sleeping, it's stressful. I've had to employ accountants, solicitors, investor solicitors. It's like it's costing me, in fact, a six-figure sum to do what she's doing. But the vision was still there, despite all the pain, despite all the collective blood giving that she's had to ooze. It's been a valuable process, and she has learned an immense amount of legalese and other stuff along the way that she would never have done if she hadn't got this investment. It was a sizable sum. We're talking a very large six-figure investment just as a part payment, with more coming in the next 3 years. But I think the investment's got to be there for the right reasons, and you've got to get investors on board for the right reasons. We took when in our business, when we looked at gaining investment, it was either list on the stock market, or AIM didn't exist then, the junior stock market. And to be quite honest, the preparation and the legality of it just outweighed the wins. So we, in fact, brought on another private investor, and along with the 4 that was already involved. So we become 5, a team of 5. And we used that money internally to do what we wanted to do, and it worked. But it's just understanding. I think the caveat is the warning I would say to anybody thinking investment is don't get into bed with somebody you don't know. Just do your due diligence, know who you're working with, know where the money's coming from, be happy that you're working with the right people and they're all doing it for the right reasons, and make sure that at the end of the day you can all smile. And I think Mark and I use a term in the company of entrepreneurs, which we both belong to in the City of London, is that if you'd be happy to go out to dinner with this person and have a great conversation, then they're probably a good fit. If they're not, give them a wide berth and move on.
Yeah, and I think that has become harder, hasn't it? Is to truly judge the value and the character and the kind of ethos of potential investors in over the online sphere. Since most business meetings kind of happen on Zoom now, so really putting in the extra time to get to know a new business partner is fairly can be make or break for your business, really.
Huge, absolutely huge.
Yeah. Absolutely. Ash, did you have any thoughts on?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, come back to that piece around investment as like the route forwards. That's kind of an incorrect way of looking at business that a lot of people seem to have by default, probably because of the way that entrepreneurship's been glamorized through the likes of TV programs and Dragon's Den, etc. At what point do I raise investment is often the question, when it's actually, should you even do that? You started the question with, if you're running a really profitable company, then, where do you invest that money? And then the question of investment came up, and I'm like, if you're running a profitable company, then why do you need investment? The best way to raise investment is by doing that through revenue and spending it. Wouldn't it be much nicer if you had 100% of your own company rather than having to share it? However, it does depend on the size of the vision. As Mark's rightly said, sometimes you can only get to the goal that you have through a large injection of capital. It's going to be really difficult to bootstrap your way there. I think the way that people look at investment is the wrong way around, certainly in Britain as well. Right, we've got this very apologetic nature of going to an investor and asking for investment. That's the way it's phrased, right? It's asking for investment or pitching for investment. If someone's going to invest in your company, it's probably because, as Simon's rightly said, you provide the best opportunity for a return on investment for their money. If that's the case versus the housing market versus the normal stock market and anywhere else you can put your money, they should be fighting to get into your company, not the other way around. If you genuinely present that opportunity for an ROI on their money, they should be fighting to get into your company, not the other way around. So for me, as someone who's fairly sure, given the size of the vision that we have, we want to democratize and personalize and digitize the acceleration of every startup and type of business anywhere. Quite a grand vision, going to need some money to get there. I've realized that we're probably going to need to start doing that next year. So essentially, up until this point, Difference is an MVP of a much bigger business. We've been around for 5+ years. And the reason that I've not raised investment yet is because I'm building the most solid foundation possible so that when we do go out for investment next year, I'm not desperate for money. I'm not desperate for anything. And it means I can be really fussy about the people that I bring onto that cap table. And I can go out to someone, and if they don't feel right, I don't have to say, please, can I have your money? I can say, hey, I'm going to go and build this. And if you want to be in on this, then let me know why I should let you in on our round, as opposed to the other way around. That becomes a much more powerful dynamic. And then, I guess rounding off with that, it's like, the other reason I want to do that, bringing it full circle back to the purpose piece, is that I want people who believe in the end vision. I don't want just one big company that wants a big chunk of money back on the amount that they give me. I want 10, 20 people who are amazing individuals who are going to really add to the community that we're building and the vision that we're building, who can give a much smaller amount of money, who might just want to brag about it on the golf course, for example. And that would be really rewarding for me, because I want to build a table of people I can have dinner with for a long time. Just again, as Mark and Simon have said, it's, an investor relationship, just like a business partner relationship, is often a relationship that will last, I think statistically, don't quote me on this, longer than most marriages nowadays. And you probably see them more often than your significant other. So, if you're going to date someone for a while before you get engaged and then stay engaged before you get married, why are we finding investors and getting into bed with them, Freudian slip, like on the first quote unquote date. That's crazy. So yeah, reposition the narrative of the investment in your head if that is the vision for the business. If you need that money, build a business that makes it ridiculously difficult to say no to invest in, and then ask them why they should be the investor that you're getting, not the other way around.
Actually, I think you made a couple of really good points there. I think if you can avoid investment out of necessity, i.e. cash is king. So, squirrel away so that you have the luxury of seeking investment to grow, not the need to survive. I think the more you can be on that spectrum, that really does put the trumps in the car bet in your favor, not the investor's favor. Definitely do that. And something I think as a route to investment that we've not mentioned, and I think it's pretty relevant to this audience, is actually crowdfunding and crowd raising. So look for some non-traditional investment routes to bring in, and particularly again, if tutoring being hugely vocational, if you're doing it because you want to democratize tutoring, if you want to grow it out, make it a community project to put out, that is exactly the kind of rich, fertile ground that, whether it's Crowdcube, Seeders, or any of the other recognized crowdfunding sites are on. And that's a really good way of getting non-influencing micro investors. I'm an investor in a business that I helped found 6-7 years ago, which has just now got to a size where it's done its first big raise, its first big Series A, but it raised over £2 million in Seeders, 2 rounds of Seeders investments that absolutely not only kept the business going, but and I don't want to get into all the reasons why it was important, but what it actually did, it created 2,000 individual micro investors who became advocates for the business that I invested in, who are now customers. So actually they own democratizing, they own a little bit of the company that they invested in. They can't control one thing that we do. They're all novated out from the business from voting. But what a fabulous way of raising money that was. And you feel like you've got a family around you.
Simon.
Yeah, I just, Mark's quite right. I took one of my businesses that I'm mentoring, 2 Seeders. We were oversubscribed 3 times on Seeders, and we're just going to aim within the next 18 months, planning to. And getting those advocates around you is what the business is about, and getting those micro investors is really important, because they are your best advocates and your best marketing opportunity. I just want to I will mention Dragon's Den. It's a wonderful program if you love entertainment. From an investment perspective, it's a crap program, of course. And I think the question that they always never ask is, why do you want the money? What are you going to do with the money? Because actually the program is not about the money, it's not about the investment, it's about the dragon, it's about the investor. And it's quite right what Ash said. If you've got the right product, the right service and the right team, the investors will flood you for the opportunity to get involved. And you only have to look at the moments on Dragon's Den, unfortunately, where you go from having no dragons to suddenly have 5 dragons wanting to invest and competing against each other to get involved, because the team's right, the product's right, and they've done everything right to get where they are. And I think if you take that cocktail of entrepreneurialism and business and service and aspiration and vision, then the investors will come, and they'll invest for the right reasons, and you'll get in bed with the right reasons to coin that phrase. It's not about the money sometimes, it's about getting the people around you to take you to the next step, that next level.
Yeah, and that's a whole area we haven't even really touched on, is it? Is how do you actually build that team around you, why that's so important, and what can happen if you start trying to build that team, after investment has come, or after the big break, and kind of the pitfalls in and around that. But really, I'd like to end with a question that, ironically, we started with, actually, which was Barbara's first question, which was, what do you see as the sorry, this was Lucy's question. What do you see as how education and tutoring will develop in the next 20 years with regard to tech? What are we going to see? Just a few predictions from the 3 of you on what we're going to see in the next 10, 20 years.
I don't know your sector, but I know tech pretty well, and I think you've got a challenging time ahead. Because if you look at how tech is advancing, and it's no different from any other sector really. If you look at manufacturing or production, you know, there's plenty of programmed bots, robots, whatever you want to think about, that can act very intelligently with AI and responsive AI. That, you know, you've got a challenge amongst yourself, but what you have got and what will never be taken away from you is that human element, is the ability to build a relationship with your client that a robot or a bot can never do. And that's going to mean returning clients who absolutely see the value in working with you, and for their kids or whatever it is. So, you know, that's what you've got to build on. And I think, you know, there will be massive companies, if there aren't already, coming into the sector and spending a lot of money on AI and responsive AI. I think your opportunity is to not negate it, but work with it and embrace it, but also sell the service and the interaction and the communication opportunities that you've got with your clients.
Yeah, I can give you a little insight, because hopefully we'll be in this space in some capacity. I'm not sat here trying to kind of eat into anybody's jobs here, but certainly in the education of entrepreneurs space and startups, that's something that we hope to work in. And yeah, echo everything that Simon just said. You know, AI and machine learning isn't there yet from a general intelligence point of view, but it is able to do a lot of data processing really quickly and utilize well-tagged content and information to give more of a personalized experience. That's going to help with the speed of education, getting the right content to the right person at the right time. But the human element won't remain. So the insight that, you know, as I say, to give more context to this, that I'll give is what we're going to be doing next. So Different as a company, as I say, is on a mission to deliver democratized entrepreneurial support at scale. That includes educating the right person on the right thing at the right time, because running your own business is one of the only jobs in the world that nobody onboards you to, which is bonkers to me. So somebody should. And, you know, part of our vision and our plan is to build a virtual co-founder that sits in your pocket, that guides you through that process and gives you access to the right thing at the right time when you need that, be it a person, be it a tool, be it a piece of content. And that's going to help me educate a lot more people a lot more quickly than I can through one-to-one phone calls. But the one thing that it won't help me do is do the personal piece. And the way that we'll negate that is through humans, one-to-many management, which is, again, something that tutors can obviously then double down on. And also through brand as well. People want to be part of a movement. That social purpose piece comes into play. They want to be part of something greater, which is the reason why, for example, brands like Gymshark have done so well, right? They're just another brand with another lot of leisure wear. They're a $1 billion company now, run by a very young man. And that's because people want to be part of something greater. You could always buy gym wear. You could buy it anywhere, but they've built something that people affiliate with and want to be part of. And I think that's something that we'll see a little bit more of, is doubling down on brand. The final piece, which is a kind of an expert area for me as someone who's grown up with it and still am one of these people, is in the gaming space and the application of gamification to learning. Gamification's always been involved in learning in some way, shape, or form, possibly in the negative gamification way. Don't learn at school, get censored attention. That's the wrong way to do it. I think we'll start to see more positive gamification, you know, achieve something, get some points in some way, shape, or form. With my startup investor hat on, I'm seeing lots of that. I'm getting pitch decks regularly come into my inbox for tools and products and services that are building apps on your phone to make learning fun. And I think we're going to see more and more and more of that, potentially in very specific areas. Like I think Kumon kind of does with maths, if I'm right. Again, kind of out of my jurisdiction a little bit, but we're seeing that in those areas. And I think that will become more digitized, more gamified, and therefore more of an experience, I guess, rather than just a one-way, here's how to do maths kind of conversation. So yeah, AI, gamification, brands, but again, doubling down on being more human.
That's a good way to go. Mark?
Just some rounded out thoughts. I was kind of minded, actually. I mentored on a corporation's intrapreneurship program a year or so back. And guys, it was a Japanese corporation. It was a European operation. And there was a real social gap in the inability of children to be multilingual when they were being taken out of their native home to a third-party country. And these guys, as a piece of social enterprise, came out and have built a piece of appware which is about empowerment of language and multilingualism. And actually, it wasn't really about the education piece, that was kind of a gimme, but it was about the social empowerment part of it, and actually making the children feel that they were inclusive citizens. So I think a lot of what tech can do, and kind of pushing those thoughts on into this conversation, I think a lot of what that tech can do is actually empower children that somehow get lost in classrooms. In the old-fashioned way of trying to say, a long time since I've sat in a schoolroom, but certainly, kids sitting in those big classrooms, not finding a voice. They've got that more one-to-one, so that kind of mass personalization, some blended learning that works for them. I think if that can work well, then that's a really good use of the tech v human part sitting in there, so that education becomes a community project, not a classroom project. I'm really not putting this very well. I appreciate that. I'm slightly concerned, though, that much as we saw during lockdown, there is the rich v poor social poverty that sits out there. And I think EdTech is great if you can afford it. And I think if we're going to go down a route of dismantling classrooms and following the workplace, we're going to end up in hybrid classrooms or whatever it will look like, then somebody has got to step in and make sure every child has a fair and even chance to have a proper education, because I think all of these things are great, but if you're in that lower percentile of our communities and societies, if you're feeling underserved already, then I think we really could be in danger of setting a two-pace nation now. And I strive much for wanting to improve the lot of the underserved communities that really deserve a better chance in life. And I hope whatever way EdTech goes, it's got to be there for everybody, and it's got to be a bit like the NHS, free at the point of service, and something which is for everybody. But like others, totally outside my jurisdiction. So that could have been 2 minutes of complete and utter rubbish. So I apologise if it was.
Quick, shut him up, quick.
He's on a ramble.
Yeah, no, what a brilliant way to end. Thank you, the three of you, for giving those final insights, and thank you, Lucy, for posing that question. Thank you, all of you, for posing those questions, which really kept the conversation going, and which only sought to add to the conversation. Thank you to Simon. You can reach out to Simon, as he's already started messaging in there at the Association of Business Mentors, and as part of the company of entrepreneurs. You can find him at the email in his Zoom name there, which will also be in the festival hub afterwards, in the how to get in touch with Simon, Ash and Mark section, which I will post in the community in just a second. Mark, thank you for joining us twice today and for contributing to the conversation so much there. Mark has been assisting Julia in understanding more about the business world, and that's a very amazing place for QT to start. So thank you very much, Mark, for joining us this evening, and for adding your years of experience to this conversation. And to Ash, really, I guess the greatest compliment I can pay Ash is that in 10 years' time, you will all be saying, I actually was in a workshop with Ash. 10 years ago in the Love Tutoring Festival, I actually was in a workshop with Ash, and you won't believe it, Mum, you won't believe it, Dad, but I was actually there with him. So
jinxed it.
Yeah, exactly. So Ash is very much one to watch. So thank you very much, the three of you. It's 8:40 p.m. That's an amazing conversation. I hope you've all learned something. The recording will be available afterwards if you want to go back and see those links. And just before we go, let me just pop that link into the chat as to where you can find out all of the information about Mark, Ash and Simon. Thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Ludo. Thanks, Ash. Thanks, Helen. Thanks, Georgina. Thanks, Barbara. Thanks, Audrey. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Lucy. Thanks, Linda. Thanks, Sadia. Who did I miss? Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Elizabeth.
And thanks